Well, I promised you this would happen only once in a while, but here we are again with the State of the Union. This time, we're going to talk about, and let's all pretend that we know how to pronounce his name. Help me.
Zohran Mamdani.
Zohran Mamdani.
Mamdani.
Zohran Mamdani.
Zohran Mamdani.
Zohran Mamdani.
Say it again.
Zohran Mamdani.
Zohran Mamdani.
Mamdani.
Zohran Mamdani. Today we're going to talk about why it's important that he's Islam, what that means. I think what we've lost here today is the ability to know what it even means to be Muslim, let alone what it means to govern as a Muslim. I think we've come to believe that it doesn't mean anything. So stay tuned, because what you're going to learn today is what's really behind Mamdani's idea of God and all that sort of stuff, and how that relates to what he is going to be if he becomes the mayor of New York City. Stay tuned for the State of the Union. Welcome to the special edition of the State of the Union. As some of you will see that I have with me today a very special guest. He has been here before. And Travis, can you introduce yourself just briefly to help some of those that may not have seen you before, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, Travis Kerns. I work for the Three Rivers Baptist Association here in Greenville, South Carolina, and help to equip and encourage churches across the northern part of Greenville County. About 100 churches have been doing that for about 4 years now. But have been on faculty at a number of seminaries and served as a missionary as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the part that we really need to know is the fact that you have gotten your PhD in apologetics. Mm-hmm. You have worked hard in knowing other religions other than Christianity. Now, that's important because you can get through a PhD in apologetics and concentrate almost solely on Christianity per se.
Right.
But you have ventured into Mormonism, but you've also taught classes, is that correct, on Islam?
Yeah, I've taught courses in every major religion, had doctoral seminars in Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism and in the cults and new religious movements. So yeah, my PhD major area was apologetics, but one of my two minors was in world religions and in cults. So there was a lot of study in those two areas. Yeah.
Good. You're going to need them today.
Yeah.
All right. So today we are doing a State of the Union because, by the time November rolls around, this may not mean anything. Perhaps Zohran Mamdani.
There it is.
Here we go. Is, he might be the mayor, he might not, and this might mean nothing. But what I think will be important about our talk today isn't just talking about Mamdani, but it's going to be, how is it that someone's religion affects them? Because I think a lot of us, and this has happened both on the Christian side, but it's also happened in the liberal media side, that unless you're a Christian, it doesn't matter what your religion is. Mm-hmm. You can govern as long as you're a good Marxist. But we shouldn't worry about what someone's religion is, because especially if it's Muslim, then you're just an anti-Islamic or Islamophobe. In fact, they've already started that rhetoric. Let me show you.
Just think about this for a second. The fact that so many people see Zohran Mamdani, a man who is born in Uganda and of Indian heritage, and they immediately go to anti-Semitism or Hamas. What else can you call that? So many of the arguments that I'm hearing against Mamdani now, I feel like I could have heard them against Obama in 2008 when he won the nomination, where it's just this constant stream of racist attacks. And unfortunately, though, we saw from politicians like Kirsten Gillibrand and others some really unfortunate Islamophobic racism directed at Mamdani. And it's just incredible to me to see how, despite the fact that Democratic voters, now CNN showed this the other day, that they sympathize with Palestinians by more than 43 points at this point, that you still see this reflexive reaction because of his faith from members of this of the party here, trying to shut him down and trying to negate his message.
So you have this idea that to question his faith in Islam is to be racist, is to be Islamophobic. It's wrong. And she's even criticizing the Democrats that are doing the same thing. And so here we have this guy that just wants more affordable housing in New York City. That's all he wants. And maybe some more affordable groceries, where the people of New York City get to own the grocery store along with everybody else. That'll be fine. He wants some free busing. He wants some free rent. He wants to freeze all the rent for sure. And that's all he wants. He just wants a better New York City. So for us to question about being Muslim, I mean, he doesn't bring it up. The media is holding water for him. So, let me ask you a two-part question. Number one, what do you know of Mamdani?
There you go.
And why would it be important that we know more about his faith? Does that really have anything to do with anything?
Yeah, sure. I think it's interesting, first of all, to point out in the clip that you showed that disagreement immediately brings with it this charge of racism, which even with a charge of racism is interesting in and of itself because it's more ethnocentrism than it would be racist, outright racism. But nonetheless, So Mamdani is born and raised, at least until he's about 7, in Uganda. His parents are Indian. They moved to Uganda fairly early in their lives. He's born there and eventually comes to the U.S. around the age of 7. If I remember correctly, moved to South Africa around 5 and then to the U.S. around 7. So he's, for the most part, raised here, but is Ugandan. His parents, though they're Indian, and the overwhelming majority of the population in India is Hindu. It's not Muslim, but his parents were Muslim, which in India, again, is a small minority, but it's a very vocal minority. And for the most part in India, Muslims and Hindus do not get along. In fact, there are specific areas in India, even in the larger cities, where Muslims will kind of congregate together, so to speak. But he's part of the Twelver Shiite division of Islam, which is the same division of Islam that runs the nation of Iran. It's one of the 2 most frightening break-off groups or smaller divisions inside the larger religion of Islam. It's not a charge of Islamophobia to question his political beliefs. I don't care if somebody's Muslim or atheist or Hindu or whatever they claim. If you're saying, I want to have city-owned grocery stores and have free busing and have rent control set by the city or lower rent or even provide free rent, that's not an Islamic question. That's a political question. Those 2 things are mutually exclusive. The question we have to ask is, and you posed it a minute ago, I think in the second part of your question is, how do those 2 things go together? Because what Mamdani's saying is outright socialist, if not completely communist. As we talked before we started, President Trump has labeled Mamdani a communist. Mamdani has been quoted as saying, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, which is a direct quote from Karl Marx.
Well, what you're saying has to be wrong, because I have seen on CNN, MSNBC, and all those very faithful stations that President Trump mislabeled him as a communist.
You have a communist running, and you shouldn't vote for him. He's a disaster.
So you're saying this isn't just socialism. He's quoting Marx himself.
Yeah, socialism is everybody pooling together for the sake of the common good. Communism is the government taking it and giving it out as the government sees fit, which is direct Marxism.
Yeah.
And when Mamdani himself says, again, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, what he's, again, not only quoting Marx, what he's saying is we're going to take from each person as they've been working hard or gathering wealth, we're going to take from them according to their ability. So the person making $1,000 a year is not going to have to give as much as a person making $100,000 a year, who wouldn't have to give as much as a person making $100 million a year. But we're going to level the playing field so that everybody has the same amount of wealth, and we're going to spread the wealth around. It's interesting that the commentator you played did say, I heard these same critiques of Obama because Obama said, let's level the playing field.
That's right.
We've heard politicians, especially over the last 10 to 15 years, talking about not making things equal in the end, but making things equal in the beginning and the end. You make them equal in the beginning, that's a fair starting point.
Mm-hmm.
If you make them equal in the end, that's socialism if everybody agrees to it. If the government forces it, it's communism.
Gotcha.
So that's what Mamdani's saying when he says city-owned grocery stores.
The policy is what stood out to a lot of people. But right, I said the freezing rents on half of the apartments, free bus service, the free childcare, and the city-run grocery stores. How do you pay for that?
Let's make all the food low cost, which everybody's going to want low cost food, but at some point somebody's got to pay for it.
Yeah.
Or if you get free busing, well, that's great, but there's no such thing as a free lunch.
Yeah.
Somebody has to pay for it somewhere. Does his Islam impact his beliefs? Politically, I've not heard him use much talk about his Islam, about his 12 or Shiite beliefs. The two seem to be mutually exclusive. And maybe mutually exclusive is too strong. They might just be exclusive in that his Islam doesn't necessarily inform his political beliefs. It seems more that, because, for example, he's saying the same things that Bernie Sanders and AOC say.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one of them are Muslim.
Right.
In fact, far from it. The same thing Elizabeth Warren says. She's not Muslim. So the three of those being non-Muslim doesn't impact what they're saying politically for the secular world. But ultimately, it does play in because of the way that other countries are run in Islam and the theology of Islam.
Mm-hmm. And it will also play into conditions that were unplanned or consequences that were not foreseen. When a decision has to be made, we always lean, especially for our ethics, for our ethical decisions, our ethical values, what we think is important, is always going to come from our faith. Even if it's, the faith of the Prime Minister of England that has faith in nothing, where he's an atheist. His ideal will be from some philosopher that he has chosen. So there's no way to get away from that.
Right.
And so with that in mind, can you tell us just some, before we get into the fundamentals of Islam, I want to know something, and this is for my own personal curiosity and maybe for the curiosity of our listeners. Is there a difference between what we would think of as middle-of-the-road Muslims that seem to, be Marxist and, that doesn't seem to make sense, but, here they are, the Democrats love them and all that sort of stuff, maybe a liberal Muslim, as opposed to a fundamentalist Muslim where you would think of them in Arabia somewhere, and is there a difference between those two? Are there liberal Muslims and fundamentalist Muslims?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are two really strong misconceptions about Islam in the world. One is that all Muslims are terrorists. That is absolutely not the case. The overwhelming majority of Muslims around the world are incredibly friendly people. They could be your neighbors, and you would only know they're Muslim if you see them in a certain style of dress, maybe going to the mosque for Friday prayer, or they're celebrating Ramadan, they're not celebrating, things like that. They're normal people who want the best for their family, and they want to leave their kids with something better than they had when they were growing up. Overwhelming majority of Muslims in the world are incredibly friendly, nice, want to live in a good place, want to be safe, on and on. Only a very, very small number, very small percentage, low single digits, are in what we would consider a fundamentalist / terroristic understanding of Islam. And those are so few and far between, they're hard to find. The reason that they make the news is because usually those are the ones that blow up buildings.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the other misconception is that all Muslims are Arab, and all Muslims are not Arab.
Right.
In fact, the largest Muslim nation in the world is Indonesia, which is not Arab at all. The majority of the Muslims in the world can't speak Arabic. which is also interesting because the only version of the Quran that's official is the Quran in Arabic.
Yeah.
So when Muslims try to read the official Quran, they can't read it because they can't read or speak Arabic. All they know to do is they've memorized lines in Arabic that they simply chant, and they most times don't know what they're saying. They're just chanting it out of rote memorization. So yeah, the overall majority of the Muslims in the world are very friendly, very good people, good in a horizontal sense, not good in a vertical sense, and they're not Arabs. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so that brings us to this question: can you help us understand? Because a lot of Americans, their first introduction to Islam, I mean, when it really impacted them was 9/11. That's when seminaries started having Islam, as rotating classes and all that sort of thing into their programs.
Yep.
And so we kind of got this in your face, this is what Islam is about. And so some people see it as very violent. Some people say, no, it's only peaceful. Can you walk us through, in a layman's way, what are the basic fundamentals of Islam? And then we'll kind of go into some little bit of the history of Islam.
Yeah, sure. So basic beliefs of Islam, first and foremost, is their belief in the Quran. The Quran is the final revelation from Allah. Allah is nothing more than the Arabic word for God. Which, on a side note, Christian missionaries have a very difficult time in Arabic-speaking parts of the world because they have to either use the word Allah and then define it, because that's just the word for God, or say something else. Usually Christian missionaries will say they're followers of Isa, which is the Arabic word for Jesus. Because if you just say I'm a follower of Allah, they immediately assume in most Arab parts of the world that you're Muslim. But belief in the Quran, that's the final revelation of God to humanity, given to Muhammad by the angel Gabriel. Interestingly, through the history of Islam, there have been a number of different versions of the Quran, kind of in the same way that the Bible has different text traditions in Hebrew and in Greek. The Quran had a number of different text traditions, all in Arabic. There were questions about which one was right, which one was wrong. A few years after Muhammad dies, one of the leaders of the worldwide Islamic community at that time, known as the Ummah, had all the other copies of the Quran that he didn't like burned. And so now we have this one official Arabic Quran. But there were a number of different text traditions early on. But they have the Quran, they have some other traditions as well. Another basic belief is Sharia law. So that is something that a lot of people have heard about. And a lot of times when Islamic politicians are running for office, the immediate critique is he wants to institute Sharia law or Quranic law instead of whatever the laws of that particular land are. That's nothing more than laws based on the Quran and the traditions of Muhammad as recorded in the Hadith. So that's just the Muhammad's traditions.
So a comparison to maybe Christians that think maybe in a similar way would be Christians that say we should, like Christian nationalists, we should use, if I can put this, and we already did a show on Christian nationalists, so look it up and, don't get all upset now. But we should use God's word to make decisions politically, if I can put it as simply as I possibly can. So, there's different versions of that, right? So you have a version of people that, want to make that strict and maybe go into the Old Testament laws and say we need those in America right now. And then there's people that say, no, there's just principles from Scripture we should use. Is that kind of the way it is in Islam? Do they have people that say it needs to be exactly or just principles?
Yeah, there are some who say we need to follow Muhammad's example to the letter, because he wrote down and had written down about him everything he was doing every day, the way he was running his community, both in Medina and in Mecca. So there are some who would say very, very strong, in the same way you get with Christianity, let's do it exactly this way. Others would say, no, let's just kind of back off that a little bit. And then others who would say that doesn't matter in the least. Let's just live according to whatever the culture dictates in our area. Yeah.
Okay.
So then they have 5 articles of faith and they have 5 pillars. Those are 2 different sets of things. But the first article of faith is God. Again, that's Allah. Their God is one. They are strict monotheists. So, in fact, Muslims would say that they are more strictly monotheistic than either Jews or Christians, because Jews believe in the Father and the Spirit, Christians believe in the Father, Son, and Spirit. Muslims will call Jews and Christians polytheists. They will not refer to us as monotheists, even though our theology dictates that. They have a very strict belief there's one God. So that's the first of the articles of faith is God. The second is in angels. So they believe in good and in bad angels. It's a really fascinating system that they have that we don't have time to go into. But these good and bad angels can influence what happens in society. And then there are even some angels called the jinn, the Jinn, who can impact you in a very negative way. They can play tricks on you. They can cause you to say and do certain things, influence your life in bad ways. It's not an exact one-to-one, but in some degree, it's kind of the, angel on one shoulder, demon on the other, kind of talking in your ear, and the jinn can come behind you and really amplify the demon on the wrong shoulder.
Okay.
Yeah. The third article of faith is books. So this deals mainly with the sacred nature of the Quran. In a Muslim household, there will be a shelf built in the room with the highest ceiling, and that shelf will be built pretty close to the ceiling of that room, and that's where Muslims will store their Quran to show it's the highest authority in the home. You'll never see a good Muslim put his Quran below his waist. So if you ever get to meet a Muslim and have a chance to share the gospel with a Muslim, never put your Bible below your waist. Never sit it down on something. Always hold it above your waist, just to show respect for the book. And the Muslim will immediately lose respect for your book, for Scripture, if you put it down on a table, on a chair, or put it below your waist. But they believe there is a preserved copy of the Quran in Arabic in heaven with Allah. So that's the fourth article of faith is the prophets. Muslims honor a total of 28 different messengers from God, beginning with Adam, ending with Muhammad. And there's most of the ones in between there you would recognize: Abraham, Noah, Moses, Jesus, John. The one major difference is where you get Abraham sacrificing Isaac. We would argue that, obviously from biblical narrative, the storyline of the Bible runs through Isaac. Muslims would argue it runs through Ishmael.
Right.
So that's where the warring factions come in, so to speak. And then the last day, they believe in a last day, a day of judgment. So those are the 5 articles of faith. Then they have 5 pillars. So these are more related to Muslim practice. The 5 articles of faith are belief, the pillars are practice. The first of the 5 pillars is called the Shahada. This is the declaration of faith. In order to convert to Islam, all you have to do is say and mean it: there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. That's it. That's all it takes. Now, obviously, I just said it. I didn't convert to Islam. There has to have actual, belief and meaning behind it. But they say that on a regular basis. In fact, they will recite that in the morning multiple times, and then they'll recite it throughout the day multiple times, just to remind themselves. The next of the pillars is daily prayers. So Muslims pray 5 times a day, at daybreak, at noon, mid-afternoon, at sunset, and late evening. They will usually, wherever they are in the world, they will pray towards Mecca, pray in that direction, because that's a sacred city for them. And they will ceremonially wash their forehead, their hands, and their feet before they pray. The most important prayer of the week is Friday at noon. So if you've ever been in a Muslim area or a community where there's a number of Muslims, you'll hear a call to prayer come out over loudspeakers just before noon on Fridays. In Muslim-controlled areas, businesses shut down, everything is closed, and everybody's at the mosque for Friday prayer. So Friday at noon is the big prayer time. Almsgiving is also part of it. So this is basically like tithing in Christianity. But because Islam is a faith and works-based religion, that almsgiving is required for entrance into the afterlife. And there's 2 types. There's legal almsgiving, which is a tax. That's 1/40th of your individual income that's just automatically taken out of your paycheck. And then there's voluntary almsgiving, which would be like our version of tithing. The 4th is fasting. So fast during Ramadan. That's the 9th month in the Islamic calendar. They'll fast during that month from sunup to sundown. They'll have a huge feast at the end of the day when the sun goes down. At the end of Ramadan, they'll have a massive family gathering where they will eat and eat and eat and gorge themselves. So that's probably the one in the pillars that everybody knows about. It's just hearing about Ramadan. The fifth is the Hajj, and that's spelled Hajj. That's a pilgrimage to Mecca that every Muslim is very strongly encouraged to do once in a lifetime. That's to travel to Mecca and you can look this up online, to see the Kaaba, K-A-B-A. That's in Mecca. It's a big black cube. It stands in the middle of a mosque in Mecca, and they will walk around that a number of times to show their basically their love for and kind of acquainting themselves with Muhammad's walking around the Kaaba to cleanse it. Interestingly, he did it 7 times. We can think some other stories in the Bible where there's 7 times around a wall with some blowing of some trumpets. But that's the Hajj. They want to do that at least once in their lifetime. Then there's a 6th unofficial pillar. This is usually the one that people really know about, and that's jihad, J-I-H-A-D, holy war.
Right.
So this is the one where everybody gets a little nervous because jihad is where you begin to, if you're alive, September 11th, 2001, I remember exactly where I was sitting when I started watching the towers get hit and come down. That was Islamic jihad from some fundamentalist terrorists. Jihad has been interpreted by Muslim scholars in 3 different ways. One of those ways is physical warfare. If I'm Muslim and you're not, it's my duty as a Muslim to kill you. Because if I kill you, that will stop you from sinning more through your life, and you'll have less to pay for in the afterlife.
Okay.
It also,
you're doing me a favor.
Yeah, I'm doing you a favor.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It also slows down, or speeds up rather, the ability of Muslims to create a worldwide Muslim community. So the fewer Muslims on the planet there are, the easier it is to create a worldwide Muslim government, more or less. So physical warfare. The second way is outward spiritual warfare. There's nothing physical involved. This would be me as a Muslim trying to convert you to Islam. There's no physical danger to it. It's just me doing everything I can to proselyte you from Christianity into Islam. The third way that it's been interpreted is internal, personal, spiritual struggle. So for me as a Muslim, I'm not trying to convert you. I'm not trying to kill you. I'm trying to battle my own flesh and wage jihad, holy war, on myself so that I become a better Muslim. So those are the 5 plus the 6th unofficial pillars in Islam, plus the 5 articles of faith. That's basic Muslim theology.
Wow. Okay. Now, when I was taking Islam as a class, when I was in seminary, we had a guy come in who was a missionary to Muslims. Now, he was asked to come in because he did not agree with the position that the seminary took that I was at. So they wanted to expose us to other theological views that were not our own. And his view was this: Islam is basically on the road to Christianity. So they believe in the same God we believe in, they just don't know he has a son. That was his big statement. And I was thinking, well, yeah, and a spirit, but it's pretty important too. So I think what he was getting at was it is possible to believe in God absent the Trinity, to reject the Trinity, to reject the Son, and try and keep the Father, not knowing he's a Father, and you are still worshiping the same God. Now, from my training, I believe that is hideous theology.
Yeah, it's a word that starts with H and ends in heresy.
Yes, it's very heretical.
Yeah.
And so the idea that you can deny the Son and still be worshiping the same God we're worshiping is a denial of Christianity. But a lot of Christians do that.
Usually the question is asked, do Christians and Muslims worship the same God? And the answer has to be unequivocally, unquestionably, no, we don't. A long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, an ancient Christian writer argued that he's writing a book called Crudeus Homo, Why the God-Man? And he says, why do we need this God-man? Why do you need the second member of the Trinity? And he says, in the Old Testament, to satisfy Old Testament law, sacrificial law, you have to have a perfect and a permanent sacrifice. And it has to be physical. Well, in the Old Testament, you have physical sacrifices. You have lambs and goats and birds and all sorts of things. But those aren't perfect and they're not permanent. Hence, going into the temple every year on Yom Kippur, on the Day of Atonement, for the priests to continue to offer these sacrifices to please God and to appease his wrath. So in order to make all this work in the New Testament, you have to have a physical, perfect, permanent sacrifice. And the only way to do that is to have God in the flesh, which is Christ the Son. John 1 tells us this. So if you don't believe in the Trinity, you're not a Christian. And you're not worshiping the same God Christians are. That's not a statement to be hateful. It's just a true statement. Mm-hmm. It's not me hating a Muslim or hating a Mormon or hating a whoever, Jehovah's Witness, by saying you're not Christian because you don't believe X. I don't think a Muslim hates me if he says to me, you don't believe in Allah. No, I don't. Not in the way that you define him. Yeah. So, there are attempts at this. There's a huge attempt by a group called CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, that's funded by a number of nations around the world that are Islamic republics, to try to make these inroads in the U.S. for Muslims. It's something to watch for. It's troubling to say the least.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. The way you described it makes Islam just sound kind of like another religion that doesn't seem to be nothing to really worry about. Why would this be different than like Mormonism? So let's say Mamdani was a Mormon. Very few people would be worried about that.
Right.
They like Glenn Beck. They'll like him too.
They like Mitt Romney, sure. Yep.
Yeah. So, Mormons seem harmless. Now, we know that, because of terrorists and things like that, and you said that a very small population of people are that way. But is there anything else that we would be worried about with a mayor of a major city in America being Muslim? Why would that matter, or are you kind of making the argument it wouldn't matter?
No, I would argue that it does matter. And it really matters for Mamdani specifically because of the particular sect of Islam that he is a part of. So he's a part of the Imami, the I-M-A-M-I. Those are also commonly called the Twelvers, just like the number 12. And that is the group, I think I mentioned earlier, that oversees and runs the government of Iran. So the Ayatollah Khomeini is a Twelver Shiite Muslim. Shiite Muslims differ from Sunni Muslims. Sunnis are the largest group of Muslims in the world. There's about 80% of the Muslims in the world are Sunni. Saudi Arabia is Sunni. Again, vast majority of Muslims in the world are Sunni. And the overall majority of them are very friendly, very kind. There are terroristic Sunni Muslims. For example, there was a man named Saeed Qutb in the 20th century who wrote a book called Milestones, sometimes translated Signposts. And in that book, he basically argues for what is the modern Bible for fundamentalist Muslims, for terroristic Muslims, argues for something called Jahiliyyah. And what he means by that is that would be a community where Islam has never been introduced. And he actually says that the vast majority of places in the world are in the state of Jahiliyyah, including a number of Muslim nations. He was an Egyptian. He argued that even though Egypt has been Muslim for centuries, he argued that Egypt was in this state of Jahiliyyah. His followers took that information in that book, formed the Muslim Brotherhood, ended up killing Anwar Sadat, who was the political leader for Egypt, based on Qutb's writings in Milestones. So he's the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, which we've heard of them since September 11, 2001. So there are fundamentalist, terroristic Sunnis. Shiites are about 15% of Muslims in the world, so much, much smaller. And they basically form three groups. There's a group that's known as the Fourers, like the number 4. There's the Seveners, the number 7, the number 12. And that's basically based on the number of leaders they see after Muhammad dies.
Okay, so they're taking a stand on how many legitimate leaders
Yep.
were there.
Yep.
So some think it's 4, some think it's
7, some think it's 12.
Okay.
Yeah. And what they're all looking for is the return of the Mahdi, the Mahdi. The Mahdi will at some point return, and he will, according to Muslim theology, he will usher in this worldwide peace and create a worldwide Muslim government called the Ummah, UMMA. That's the worldwide Muslim community, all run by one guy. And that would be the Mahdi, the returned caliph, who's this messianic figure in Islam. Now, interestingly, the former president of Iran is a 12er Shiite nation, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. We remember him. A number of people remember him.
Yeah.
If you look at the way his name is spelled, it has Mahdi in his last name. So Ahmadinejad, again, has that word in there. Some people believe, I'm one of them, that he actually thought he was the Mahdi returned, which is why, since the political revolution in the late 1970s in Iran, we don't want them having nuclear weapons. Because the fastest way to usher in the return of the Mahdi is to kill everybody else.
Oh, wow.
And just have the 12er Shiites run the world from Tehran. So this is more than a political thing. When it comes to like the U.S. relationship with Iran, it can be incredibly concerning. Because it's one thing to say politically, I want people to do X, Y, or Z. It's another thing to say I want to do X, Y, and Z politically because of a religious belief that I have to usher in this golden age at the end of the world. That's not, playing left field and right field. That's apples and washing machines, different. So Mamdani, though, was a 12er Shiite. What that means is that he believes the imam, the leader of the Muslim community, is sinless. In fact, so sinless that they don't even cast a shadow.
Oh, but you can prove that, right?
One would think. Stand outside about 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 10 o'clock in the morning, there's going to be a shadow. Doesn't cast a shadow, and they're sinless in all that they do. So those from Iran believe that the Ayatollah, the leader of Iran, is that imam for the nation. Whatever he says goes, because it's right, because he's hearing directly from Allah. So for Mamdani, his 12er Shiite Islam, though I said earlier it's at least exclusive, is not mutually exclusive from his Marxism, the two do tend to tie together, because in Marxism, it's the government giving people what they need. In 12er Shiite Islam, it's the Ayatollah or the Imam giving people what they need based on what he hears from God. So that's why it's incredibly troubling to see specifically a 12er Shiite wanting to be mayor of the largest city in the U.S., with also, interestingly, the largest Jewish population of any city in the world.
Right.
Because he is adamantly opposed to, at least from past statements, to nationhood for Israel, for Jewish religious freedom, things like that, though he's shifted in recent weeks. So yeah, it's not something that's nothing, but it's not something that's, that I'm losing sleep over every night.
Yeah.
The major difference for a Muslim who's a fundamentalist to be mayor of a large city versus a Mormon being mayor of a large city is there's 17 million Mormons around the world. There are fundamentalist Mormons who kill people. But just based on percentages, that number is incredibly small. Not percentage, just the number itself. There's 1 billion Muslims around the world, or more now.
Yeah.
So even though the percentages may be the same as in Mormonism, the numbers, just because there's so many more Muslims, are significantly higher. Mormons don't run entire nations. Muslims run nations, and they run nations with nuclear weapons. So this is why it could be very troubling very quickly for especially somebody from a 12er Shiite perspective to run a major city.
Wow. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Well, this is all the time we have. But do you have anything else you want to add to all that, or not? I'll let you think about that for a second while I bring this to a close. Because what's important about this isn't that we're trying to make you scared and fear Muslims and fear what's going to happen in New York City and fear here and there. But what's important is that I believe we have come to think that your personal belief system is isolated from your political system. We have come to believe that your faith has some kind of distance from your decision making. And the Lord made us in such a way that we cannot but make decisions based on the faith that we really have. If you really want to see, what someone believes, you find out what decisions they have made and how they have made them and to what extent they dig into their faith. And I think that is hugely important. It's something we depend on when we have, when we are finally able to vote for a good man who loves the Lord. When you find, that unicorn, you can be all excited because he'll rely on his faith, and that's what makes him a good man when he believes in the true God. But what happens when someone is really relying on a faith in a false god? Because I think one of the things we forget is that a lot of these religions aren't holding on to nothing. It's not that they believe in something that just isn't there at all. What they believe in is something that really is there, I believe. And I think this can be backed up by several scholars that I think know Scripture well and know the Lord. That these aren't people, when people are worshiping another god, as we call it, they're worshiping something that is there. Demons want people to believe, and Satan himself want people to believe in other gods. It's not hard to believe that Satan and his demons aren't going to do things to ensure that people keep believing. And so it's not that there's nothing there. I think there is something there, even according to Ephesians chapter 6. We are not wrestling flesh and blood. We are wrestling principalities and powers. The darkness of this world are beings that think. And this is the fallen angels that have resisted the Lord and joined with Satan. And I know all of this sounds crazy, and I am sure there are people that are going to get clips of this, and it's going to, make me sound like an insane person. But if believing in Ephesians 6 makes me insane, then fine. But it is something to consider. It isn't just that another religion or even atheism is nothing, or it is just another point of view. Anything that goes against the knowledge of our God is evil. And therefore, we should pay attention when we know that there are going to be people put into power that hold these other beliefs. And so, with having said that, do you have anything else you'd like to add to all this?
Yeah, I would just say, don't be scared. If you have a chance to speak to a Muslim, share the gospel. Mm-hmm. Romans 1:16 tells us the gospel is the power of God for salvation. Don't try to argue with a Muslim. Don't try to go back and forth with Scripture. It turns into my dad can beat up your dad on the schoolyard with 6-year-olds. Just share the gospel. The same power found in let there be light is found in Romans 3:23, 6:23, 5:8, 10, 9, and 10. The other thing I would say is yes, I agree wholeheartedly that Islam is evil, that the Quran is a book inspired by the devil, that Muhammad was either at the least inspired by the devil or possessed by the devil or by a demon. Those aren't hateful words. That's just what I believe biblically and theologically. But what's important to believe is that Satan has not only lost the battle, he's lost the war. Mm-hmm. Genesis 3:15 tells us in that first gospel presentation that Satan will bruise the son of the woman on the heel, but he will bruise Satan on the head. Mm. So a heel wound is not mortal, but a head wound is. It will kill you. There's no reason to be afraid. This is also not something that has taken God by surprise.
That's right.
He has foreordained all these things from before the foundation of the world. Romans 8 tells us, and I'm with you, right? If I believe in Ephesians 6 and Romans 8 and that makes me crazy, so be it. Don't be scared. Share the gospel. Take faith that Christ is on the throne, reigning and ruling in sovereign command every moment of every day. He's not taken by surprise. He already knows if Mandani will be elected or not. He already knows the fate of New York, the fate of the U.S., the fate of the world, knows when the second coming will take place. This is nothing that will take the Father by surprise. So place your faith and your trust in Christ, in, as Francis Schaeffer said, the God who is there and is not silent.
That's right. Amen. I have nothing to add to that. So thanks for joining us for the State of the Union, and I hope to see you next time.